Alright YouTube, what's up, we're gonna do things a little bit differently. Normally you guys see the highlights. Right now, I'm the final two tables. I'm chip leading in the 1-9 kickoff. It is a Winter Series day. For some reason, my internet's not working. The upload's in my OBS, which is my stream recording program. But I figured, since we're gonna be since we're deep anyway, it's kind of cool maybe to do a video like this for you guys where I just go over hands and, you know, there's no chat interaction. It's solely and purely for you guys. It's actually gonna be weird. I'm playing a few other tables. It's gonna be weird not to switch scenes constantly because I use hotkeys to press around my stream. But yeah, my good friend Finton Hand is on the final table as well. I guess I'll just sit like this because then my left hand controls all the hotkeys, and you know, that way we don't have to make a mistake and go to the wrong table or something. So first place prize is $2,280. We're guaranteed 242. I have a pretty fat chip lead, as you can see. Made a pretty monster call. I'll give you guys a little update on how I got here. I pretty much destroyed a guy here. Alright, let's see. I'm gonna go with the big C-bet. I think it's okay. It's a very draw heavy board. I can put a lot of sort of like ICM pressure. Big C-betting though is not necessarily, you know, when you think, oh, there's a lot of ICM pressure, big C-betting is not always necessary, because ICM pressure, which means, you know, pay jump pressure, creates a lot of folds anyway. So therefore on a final table you won't see big bets very often, but I think in this case, on that board with that hand, it was definitely a good possibility. I get a lot of questions about, same here, I'm just gonna bet small on the flop. I think I'll get a lot of auto folds from like queen ten of spades. You know, there's hands like queen ten of spades, king queen, that might just fold instantly. And you might think to yourself, well, why does it matter if they fold because I beat those? But usually those hands will start betting. I'm actually gonna put a second barrel in. I think that lots of pairs he'll get in, so when you think about his calling range, I think a lot of this is going to be ace highs, and there might, you know, king queen of diamonds still has to call the flop, so I'm just going to put a second barrel in to get folds from those. I think now I also can get rid of his, like, you know, ace six of diamonds or ace three, ace four. There is going to be some traps, sure, but like aces and kings, but even queens he just has to shove. There's no flatting with queens here. I'm a little worried he just has ace7 or ace5. Sixes is a good hand too, so generally cards below a 9 or 8 aren't really great runouts for bluffs as a preflop raiser. So I'm just gonna check it. Folds. You can have, I think sevens would shove pre-flop in his case, but you can have fives or like sixes, because if I check the river, I pretty much never have a pair. So that's fine. It feels a bit weird, you know, if you're sort of like bluffing the turn with ace high, but like I said, you're gonna run into them having king queen, and if he bets on the turn, I'm not gonna call on 9-7-5 deuce, you know. Not gonna check call because there's also the fact that he's still gonna have equity with those hands. He could make a better hand. I could already be pretty much dead. Alright, so big blinds is always going to be pretty aggro on these boards just because they have more hands than us that are good. You know, we're not opening 8-7 offsuit or 10-9 offsuit, which is hands that the button has. We do have 10-9 suited though, and we have 8-7s and 6s, so You know, this board is a lot better than 6-5-4, for instance. We have to kind of decide if we want to... The board is so dry, I just really don't think that... I really don't think that he's just going to check a hand like 8-7 right now. So at that point, I just think like, oh, he might have 8x, or, you know, let's say he has a hand like... let's say he has a hand... let me change that table name so you guys don't get fucking... Look at this. Let me put... Wow, look at this. Next level fucking YouTube videos. What? Replay. So, let's say that he has a hand like, you know, 10-7 or 10-8 or all these kind of hands where he thinks on the flop, oh, this is pretty nice. And then the turn comes, he's like, pot's actually getting kind of big. I didn't hit my draw. They called the flop, which is also just makes it a little bit worse, right? So, decided to overbet just to like max pressure. Over here, you raise pre-flop. 20 big blinds deep. We're pretty much defending any king, queen, jack offsuit. So even queen 4. That's a really bad card. Most of the hands that he checks the flop with and calls the turn with are going to be ace highs. Could also be good. Maybe we're losing less against fucking 8s or something. But generally, it's not great. So we're just going to give up. It's also not very likely for us to have ace high. It's really hard to make a lot of whole other strong combinations. It's not like we're just going to be betting jack 10 on the river, right? So even the sort of like 8, 7, 6 is part of his range. We can't really pressure. So it's just a good time to give up, really. Deuce 4, not going to do anything. Pretty shitty hand. Queen 9 is going to be an open on the button. Queen 9 mixes on the turn. When I say mixes, it means that it folds sometimes and it raises sometimes. But on the button, it's pretty much a pure open. You can always deviate a little bit. Like if, let's say, if it's like a 60% open on the turn or something. If I am chip leader and the stacks to my left are all, you know, medium-sized stacks, then I will definitely open it 100% from there. Whereas sometimes if I'm medium stacked and I have a bunch of big stacks here and it's right before the final table, I'll fold it because I can't really handle any heat from people behind me, you know, so. It's pretty interesting because I guess that this might be just a full sort of like video. A full sort of like video. I mean, like, you know, normally you guys see the highlights or the big pots. We used to have longer YouTube videos where you saw like every big pot up until the end, but we made them a little bit shorter to have them a little bit more action-packed. A little bit more compact, I should say, because sometimes they're still long, but then they're just like lots of big situations. But I'll just go into like a lot of strategic detail. And then, you know, no matter where we finish the run, hopefully that it's some sort of interesting for you guys and you learn something from it, or you think it's useful, or you think it's fun. Don't get carried away with pre-flop raising. There just isn't enough ICM yet. And when I say there isn't enough ICM, it just means like the pay jumps aren't big enough yet. There isn't enough money pressure from pay jumps yet, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, you see, somebody really doesn't give a fuck if he gets 12th or 9th, right? It's $30. So generally it's really important to make the final table because it's a little bit more, it's a little easier to navigate and all that stuff. But, you know, generally people won't be thinking about this. People just kind of look like what's ahead of them, and if what's ahead is $30, then it's like, okay, fuck it, like I'm not gonna make some tough folds, you know. So opening Jack 8 just isn't gonna do it, you know. I get lots of questions from people that ask like, oh, when you're chip leader, do you then take it easy? Or, you know, you pretty much play the same game, you just can hold over somebody's head that you can knock them out and he can't do the same to you. And that advantage gets more and more important once there's more and more at stake, right? But when there's nothing at stake, it's just a numbers game. Because it doesn't matter if I have fucking 72 big blinds. If they have 24, then we're playing a 24 big blind depth, a stack depth pot, right? Alright, sixes. We're gonna ship this in. If this is a 30 big blind stack of somebody that I don't necessarily respect, and I could definitely flat also, but Ronin's very good. So then I'm just gonna take the... Now, because he's good, going all in for 30 big blinds there with sixes becomes the highest EV option. That's the most value option, whereas if he's not a stuff post flop, then playing sixes post has a lot of advantages. He's gonna raise here. Very standard, you guys would know what to do there too, obviously. Hope for an all-in. Queen's just so fucking strong. Not gonna fuck around with this. You know, and even in situations where you have a lot of fold equity, you still want to be very conscientious of the fact that you have a hand that blocks good hands, right? So you'll see even on final tables, you might see a little bit of examples because, you know, I'm a big favorite to make the final table, but you'll see on the final table, I might, as a chip leader, I might fold a hand like 7-6 suited, whereas I'll raise like, you know, a hand like king 6 off or something. It's just because that king blocker is so much more important. When you have 7-6 suited, you actually block the cards you want them to have and fold, you know. And like little things like that are really important, especially when you are a big stack and other stacks behind you are kind of relying of going all in against you. When they go all in against you, they need an ace, a king, or a queen in their hand a lot, you know. So. And the funny thing is, like, you might make a point like, well, 7-6 blocks 7s and 6s, and that's a good hand to go all in with, but not on the final table. I don't think the money pressure is enough to raise into the big blinds with a hand as weak as queen 6. Okay, I'm gonna fold that. Oh my god, I pre-registered some tournaments. Holy shit. Wow, I was right on time. Because my internet dropped, right, so... it's weird because obviously like playing poker is profitable for me and I'm also a poker player, but once my stream doesn't work, I figured to make the most out of this because like I also just create content, right? So I figured to make the most out of this and just record it for YouTube. But playing more tournaments than that, then it's actually better for me to just like, you know, do some studying and watch a movie and just get some fucking sleep. So yeah, it's just better for me to just not play more tonight and just focus on other things. Alright, we're gonna defend 10-6 here. Just have to defend the big blind a lot. This is something that comes back a lot from my chat, and I even see it in the YouTube comments sometime where people say, oh, that's what you get defending the big blind with 10-7 offsuit or something, but you know, like, joke's on you, you're just bleeding money not doing it. So I'm gonna have some king highs, him as well. I'm gonna have some ace x and stuff, but there's also a part of my range. Let's say I have a hand like 5-4 suited here. I want to call a small bet on the flop. There's also a part of my range that just wants to attack him here. So I'm just gonna put pressure on him and his ace x because, you know, he might want to pot control on this card. And if I lead my 10s here sometimes, and this is the most important thing, if I actually lead out my 10x here like I am doing now, then when I have a hand like queen jack off or 5-4 suited, I get to bluff with them. So if I never bet out my 10x there, like what if we go to showdown there, you know, what if Finton checks ace-5 behind on the turn and I bet the river and he calls and he sees that I have 10-6 and I didn't lead the turn out. And he can make a note on me and says like, oh, you know, exactly describing that, and then saying that he can just call next time I do lead out because then I'm most likely to have a bluff, right? You can make a case for leading out when you have, and this is all like, this also seems very much in detail, right? But you can make a case for leading out when I have king 10, queen 10, jack 10, because if I have those cards, then I block his bluffs on the flop, which makes him more likely to have ace x, right? Because he could have king jack, queen jack, and they're just gonna fold when I lead the turn. All right, so we raised here. Generally, we can bet 1 big blind on king and queen high boards that have 2 low cards with it. This is something that is very underused. This is something that's pretty new, actually. And the main reason being, it's very easy for people to miss these boards, especially with, you know, a high card low. You're going to have hands like Jack 9, 10 9, Jack 7, 10 7. You name it, you can figure it out. 2 cards between those 2 cards. And they're just usually going to auto fold. And people actually fold way too much. Especially looking at the fact that, you know, I bet 1 big blind. So they get pretty much like 6.5 to 1 on a call. So they would have to call quite a bit. But it's really hard for people to figure that out. And it's pretty logical because it feels very counterintuitive to call with certain hands. I mean, if you just look at this, if you look at the full percentage, right? If you divide the bet over the total pot, you get the percentage that somebody's supposed to fold mathematically. So they're only supposed to fold in this scenario 15%. Now it's going to be a little bit more because out of position, it's always going to be a bit more. Okay, let's not go too much into detail about that because that could be a bit much all at once. But so you're just going to see this. So you're just going to, let's say they have to defend 70% of the time on this board. It's just going to be so hard for them to find that. You know, what are they going to pick? Like Jack 9 with the Jack of diamonds? You just don't see people do it, you know? Like King 5 is probably a call here, you know? And I think that people generally just snap fold those. So it's a really good tool to get some cheap folds. All right, so we're going to defend here. Multi-way 5 for suited. It's pretty good to defend hands like 5-6, 5 for suited, 7-6 offsuit already, 3-way. It's very unlikely that somebody dominates one of your cards. And suited, it becomes even better, of course. They check in position. I have the bottom of range. That means that like this is one of the weakest cards I'll have. It's not great to block clubs, but I think in this instance it doesn't matter, especially with these. There's not a whole lot of clubs combinations that he'll call with, so we're gonna shove and we get a fold. It's gonna be very daunting, but you just have to bluff with the worst of your hands. And meanwhile, we're gonna go all in here, blind to blind. But you also have to consider, right? Like I said, so pre-flop he has 20 big blinds. So if he has ace king, ace queen, ace jack, possibly ace 10, he should, but who knows if he will. But possibly ace 10 will go all in here. So he's already pretty capped in terms of the ace x hands that he can have, right? And then from the ones that he does have, I don't think he's checking back a whole lot of them, especially with the flush draw on board. It's a relatively safe board. I mean, there's always a chance, of course, but I just think that we go towards different hands a whole lot. It's a little bit hard, to be honest, to assess what he'll have. Because if he does call the turn bet, then I can't think of a whole lot of hands. Like maybe like 10-9 suited, Jack-9 suited, King-9 suited. You know, maybe a hand like pocket eights that still thinks this is a pretty safe board. But if he'll check the flop, call the turn, fold the river. But I've seen people do crazier things, but for instance, than fold rivers here with like ace 4, ace 5, ace deuce or something. People will talk themselves into fold, but he's snap folded, so I don't think that's really the case. But yeah, it's important to realize that we have the very worst cards that we'll have, right? Deuce 4, we're not betting on the turn, so in the situation where we bet the turn and we get to the river, this is actually the worst one we'll ever have, is 5-4. Generally, when you're bluffing, you don't want to block the auto folds from somebody else, so that means that having clubs in this instance is pretty bad. But it would be way worse to have a hand like Jack 10 of clubs, because that blocks so many of their misses. It also blocks Jack 9, 10, 9 that we can get good folds against, or even the occasional super passively played pocket 10s, but that's such a small percentage. It's mostly about the clubs and the Jack 10, 10, 9. So The only hands that he'll play from the button that have the 4 or 5 of clubs is ace 4, ace 5, but the ace is a club, so we don't block those hands at all. So I think that this still qualifies as a really good bluff shove. And we get it through, so yay for us. Alright, we're gonna open queen 9 suited here, very standard. Some picture. We get 3 bets. It's a massive one too, especially looking at the stack size. So we're just gonna fold. There's no reason to call there. I think just the stack size. It's kind of funny how that works out, because I think that just the stack size already kind of shows us that he really does not want that he might be a bit nervous about this spot, right? Let's see, how many big blinds was he on? He's at like 35 big blinds and he makes it 9 big blinds. That's really more than 9 big blinds, 9.5 big blinds. So, you know, it leaves like no room to navigate, right? So his bluffs will become way too expensive, and that just means that it's not a really good c-bet sizing, which usually means that people just don't want action, or at least they don't want to play a flop, or they're nervous, or it's kind of funny because I noticed that I did this myself too a few years ago when I was playing high roller tournaments and I wasn't studying much and stuff, but I still played high rollers because I wanted to put, you know, for me it's important to put a show on as well. So I register tons of tournaments where I'm not even sure if I have an edge, because I think it's good to have content, and I think it's, the funny thing is that it's also just fun to play, but I have a good reason for it, right? Because it's almost like a marketing budget. But I noticed myself too, one of my coaches would say like, your 3-bet sizings are too big. And the reason is exactly the same that somebody might do it in this 1 and 9, is because they might be uncomfortable. So that's always a sort of funny given. So normally this would be the bottom of our opening range. I think we can still get away with it. This one is already iffy though, I have to say. Yeah, there you go. I deserve this one, I guess. I mean, there just hasn't been a whole lot of pre-flop regression here, so... But again, I would much rather open with King Deuce offsuit than this hand, but I really thought that I could push the boundaries a bit. And, you know, maybe I can. That's the one thing you have to be very careful about in poker, right? Is if something goes wrong once, it doesn't mean it's bad. You know, if you go all in and with a bluff and somebody calls you, like on the 5-4 hand, if somebody calls me there, then it doesn't mean that it's a bad bluff. Like, it could be. I can look at it, but the fact if somebody has fucking a set of 9s here or something, or ace queen, that doesn't mean that it's a bad bluff, right? Just because one time somebody happened to have a hand. So maybe I can get away with 9-8 on this table, but it's iffy. All right, we want to limp a lot of small blinds. Reason being, of course, because we have to pay half a big blind for a 4 big blind pot, so we get really good odds. I think in this scenario, people will shove an ace a lot, so I can just kind of blindly stab. We make the final table now, which is nice. I always use this background on stream, and I always will put the final table fire there, of course. Yeah, so. Hi, my friend. First casualty, nice. Pretty bad situation for them, but it's a regular going out that I play against more often, which is always a welcome sight. At final tables, ace-x hands can be used very well for bluffs as one of the chip leaders, but ace-6 is a little bit disgusting, and you know, ace-5 or ace-8 or ace-9 I definitely would have used, so let's say that. Ace-6 is just so disgustingly bad. And of course, the reason being is that ace-5 you can still make straights. Alright, we're gonna open King Deuce suited here. Like we said before, we're really gonna be looking towards hands like ace-x, king-x to make raises on a final table. Easily gonna fold, 25 big blind shove. Don't really have to think twice about it. If my stack was more dominant than this, because there's, let's say that this guy being the small blind is good for us, right? Because it's one of the bigger stacks that's left at the table, but small blind is the worst position pretty much for them to play hands on, because they don't close the action and they're still going to be out of position post flop against everybody. So the fact that this player has 70 big blinds though is a little bit of a problem for me to just start opening king 4 offs and stuff. With the pay jumps, as you can see, you know, we make 315 now. If everybody has 20 big blinds, and then everybody's shitting themselves that they're only going to go out for 8 and 315, whereas if they survive 5 spots, they'll just be looking at 9 or 1200. So it's you always kind of want to leverage the pay jumps and leverage stacks against each other. And when you're in the final table, it's kind of your job to figure out where the leverage is, right? Like, can I leverage the fact that there's a few short stacks here against the fact that he might fold? Unlikely in this case, because he has 70 big blinds and I do too. So, you know, I can raise him all he wants, but he can just see a flop and think, go fuck yourself, you know, which is a pretty good strategy. Big c-bet, but it's also a really dry board. If this board was like king 10 deuce or something, or let's say king 9 deuce, I would definitely fold my deuce. That's obviously the gin card for me. I will be check raising the turn because we're so deep. It also depends on the bet sizing though. If he bets 15 big blinds, then I'm not gonna raise the turn, but the thing is though, if I call 8 big blinds, the pot will be 29. It's just going to be really hard to get the money in. Plus there's a lot of hands that kind of either destroy my action, lose my action. You know, a 3 or 8 would be a disaster. A spade might not be a disaster, but could be. But even if it's not a disaster, it destroys my action. He might not bet. I don't really want to lead out into it. So, you know, if the equity of your hand is volatile, which this one is, it could turn to shit on the river. Then the more volatile the equity around your good hand is, the faster you want to play it. Like this is clearly a really, really good river for me. I lose against jacks, but I mean, 10-9 should not be in there. Maybe it's 10-9 of spades, but who the fuck knows? But this is just going to be a slam dunk all in for us. It's about as safe as it gets. I don't think the board has been draw heavy enough to let them bluff at it or something. Those people aren't that happy to just like fucking rip their missed spades in on the final table anyway. But now we did some really good business here because now we're really separating ourselves from the pack. So a really great turn for us there. Ace-9 is a really good 3-bet bluffing hand. Just gonna shove. Just put pressure at 16 big blinds. I mean, now I'm leveraging against him. The fact that there's an 18, 28, 12 big blind stack, you know. Unfortunately, we lose the flip, but nothing is nothing's on the hand really. Now that this stack is a little bit decimated compared to before, I can definitely turn the heat on a little bit in these spots that I'm raising here. This is something I have to be a little bit mindful of, and that we're gonna kind of like, you know, put pressure on, but also not go completely crazy. Gonna fold when we 3-bet here. We really want blockers. You can't just do anything that looks pretty. You know, like having the chip lead doesn't mean that you can just do whatever the fuck you want, because one thing that people underestimate is you can't just start blasting it off, because, you know, the moment I lose an all-in against them, then all of a sudden I have 40 big blinds, and look at what it does then. Then I'm tied with them. He has a massive stack to our right, and all of a sudden these stacks can put a serious dent into us, you know. So, like, you just kind of have to pick your spots, and it's a very interesting process navigating through a final table. I love it. I also put the most hours into this out of studying. I also think that studying a final table is very optimal because that's where all the money gets divided, and I feel like making really big decisions that are wrong and making big mistakes when all the money gets divided is the worst you can do. If you look at like an immediate mistake here, it can cost you thousands of dollars, whereas, you know, the start of a tournament, that's just not the case. So, wow. I'm not gonna insta fold. It's I like playing fast, but if I insta fold and this guy thinks like, oh, that was nice. Like, let's say he has fucking ace 5. I want him to sweat a little bit, right? I want him to think like, oh shit, you know what's going down here. Same thing. We're not gonna do anything. We can't really call with so many people behind us, and we want to raise blockers. This would be okay though, because it has playability post. But his opening range is still gonna be a lot snugger than normal, so. I'll open Jack 8. I wouldn't have opened this if they were still at 60 big blinds with us. But I think I can do that now. Wow. That's an 8 big blind stack that just calls. I mean, like normally that'd be pretty terrifying, but I think I'm just gonna stab 1 big blind and see what happens. I don't need to invest a whole lot with them in. They should be really terrified of that stack behind them. Because if they call light and they go all in, they just lose it, and they're gonna assume that that stack has it a lot. I figured that any reasonable ace goes all in there, so I really think that once they call, it's gonna be some sort of like Jack 10 suited hand that they probably shouldn't be playing, but they still did, you know. Ace-X is just a very natural sort of all-in hand for short stack, so once the board is ace high with, you know, it's dry as shit, so I think we can get away with a lot. But betting 1 big blind I think is pretty smart there, because it's a minimum investment. I leverage this stack against him, so he's gonna have a really tough time just kind of liberally playing with somebody that could very well go all in and you lose your money, or you're in like this sort of like a annoying spot where you just have to call a lot even though you know you're crushed. So I figured like he's gonna have some suited connectors and he's gonna be just auto folding a lot. So I figured it was a good spot to bet 1 big blind. And as I do that, somebody is out. It's our friend. He did flat with an ace here, which is interesting to see. So I guess I'm not completely... my estimation, I think in general for these positions is probably going to be good, but... General rule, if you're as a short stack, you're going to end up calling all in from a big blind anyway, then you might as well shove yourself, so... so you don't end up calling it off, you know. Big blind might end up folding something that's, you know, has really good equity against you. Suited 1 gapper is just out of position, just a really bad spot for us. Alright, pocket 8s. Pretty interesting hand. I think I'm just gonna flat him. Ronan still has a raising range that contains bluffs, but it's also still pretty strong, right? The better the player, the more he'll find bluffs to raise with still. I'm just gonna take a stab. As bluffs, we use some ace-x hands, suited ace-x hands, or a hand like ace-9 offsuit. We're gonna stab here in position. I have a good hand also to just call a check raise. There's also hands that I still beat that he could check raise all in. But I'm also gonna be up against some higher pairs sometimes, but that's just, you know, the situation here. Oof, 1 higher. That's a good card. So, nothing we can do really there. That hand displays itself. And we're gonna go raising. Of course, we go back to like the blocker strategy, right? The ace is a really good hand. If reversely, if we had 25 big blinds and these were all 40 big blind stacks, and I wouldn't open this hand just because I wouldn't be able to stand any heat. He's gonna 3-bet bluff some ace-x. He's gonna shove some strong ace-x. So I think that we don't really have to be concerned here as of yet. So we're gonna bet and we're just gonna call. Of course, he's gonna also have some ace-x, but the biggest thing I'm worried about is probably having a hand, being up against a hand like ace-9, ace-10. You could have some 8x for bluffs, but generally, I think we're gonna be good. I do think that there's no real merit to betting here, though. I don't want to open up the action just yet. I feel very comfortable with my hand. Just gonna see a river. Question is, do we want to value bet the river? I think we do. We don't have to be afraid of ace-5, ace-deuce. I don't think he check raises 8x enough and then checks the turn for us to be afraid of getting check raised by that. Like I said, I do think that he bets the stronger ace-x, ace-9. Well, that's just unlucky. Because like I said, I think one of the only hands that we are gonna see that doesn't do anything pre-flop is either ace-9 or ace-10, but you know, then again we beat ace-6, ace-5, ace-4, ace-3, ace-deuce, which will all play it relatively the same, but we lose a reasonable sized pot there. But I still think it's pretty good to go for a bet. I just can't think of many hands that beat us, right? Pocket fives is gonna either bet the turn or bet the river themselves, you know, afraid that I would check a hand like 10s behind or something. So this is just getting pipped, and this is just, you know, one of those times where just like, okay, because he had this one and not all the other ones, so it's absolutely fine with me. I think we deduced really well all the hands that he couldn't have to beat us, and I think that was his fair assessment, so that's all good. All right, gonna open 10s. Of course, we have to be very aware of our new position at the table. We're 5th out of 7 now, so we're gonna have to be a lot more tight, because especially the 3 people to our left cover us. That's really important. I'm gonna go back to a 1 big blind betting strategy. I think that's pretty good here. He does have quite a few Jack X, of course, that he's gonna defend. I block some really important ones though. The Jack 10s. That's a gigantic check raise. Just gonna call. I think that we're gonna get a very honest answer of what's going on the turn here, because once we call here, like, we kind of lose our king queens and shit. So like I said, this should really give us a pretty clear idea of where we're at. We're not gonna be fucking around too much with a min raise pre with these stacks behind us, and then a 1 big blind bet on the flop and call a check raise to 4 big blind. So. And I think I'm just gonna follow through. Even as 5x gets there, that check raises, which happens sometimes. I'm just gonna fold. I think this is probably a little bit of an overplay on his side. I think that checking the turn there is really good. I'm super comfortable folding my hand there. I really don't think it's that good. And just like that, we're in last place. But you know, in final table, I fold this because everybody covers me, literally. There's a lot of ICM pressure with 25 to 40 big blind stacks. It's all about switching gears, right? So at first we're chip leading, doing well, then we lose that pot there, and that just kind of flips it. They probably, I'm just gonna assume they hit a jack. I don't really see like a whole lot of natural bluffs on that board, because if you think about like, okay, what's their bluffing range here? There's no straight draws. There's no straight draws, there's no flush draws. I block backdoor flush draws that could check raise, right? You had like king 10, queen 10 of hearts, you know, cards that hug the jack. I block the 10x backdoor flush draws as well for those same hands. So you just kind of have to wonder to yourself, okay, so what's the bluff? And that's exactly why I think they should check raise, check the turn, because I don't really see what continues here. Like I literally can't think of a hand when I'm looking at this. You know, and king queens are supposed to shove before the flop because I have a good stack. Actually, I'm not chip leader anymore, so that's not necessarily true. But yeah, this just goes so heavily towards just having king jack offsuit or something, or an ace jack offsuit that didn't shove pre-flop. Which I think is okay. I think if you have ace jack offsuit there and I'm a chip leader, you should shove. If I'm not the chip leader, then my range becomes a bit tighter. That probably means that you should fold. Now I see him opening 2.3x. So, you know, these are like little hints that you kind of look for. I'm not trying to say anything bad, but I also just want to kind of let you know how the mind works when you're trying to navigate through a final table, right? And if you see somebody do some stuff like, okay, that's a pretty big check raise on a flop. That's a really dry board to bet on a turn when you don't have any natural bluffs. Okay, you know, and then you see somebody open 2.3x twice. It's just like little sort of notifications that you need to kind of add up in your head, and could come to a conclusion that I don't think that a player is good at a final table, or you know, or that somebody is really good at a final table, or maybe there's a hint that somebody's using strategies that are surprising to me, but that are actually really good because I haven't thought about them. Or, you know, it's not like my opinion is the word of God, but also for myself, I know that I put a lot of work into final tables. So at the same time, I do think that I have a good handle on them, right? So, but you always need to keep your mind open and curious for things that you see that you don't really do yourself yet, because that's something that will really, really stagnate your progress in poker if you always think like, oh, that's bad, I never see that, I never do that, that's so bad. Which is pretty much like, to be really honest, guys, and this might sound a bit like tough love, but honestly, that's like fucking YouTube comments, right? YouTube comments, if you scroll down the YouTube comments, it's a list of people that see something that they wouldn't do, that they criticize. And you're never going to learn from somebody else that's playing if you're just going to see something that you're not familiar with and criticize it. If I play against Ronan, who's really good, if I play against him and he makes a call on the river and I'm like, what? I would never call there. Then to myself, let's say the ace-9 hand, right? If I would think to myself, wow, I would never check raise there. Am I going to think, what the fuck, what is he doing? No, I'm gonna think like, am I missing value there? Should I check raise? And I'm gonna look for the hand, right? I'm gonna look the hand, I'm gonna run programs on it, I'm gonna do some calculations, I'm gonna do all my work and see if it's good. But starting from a place of that's fucking terrible, or that's bad, or I would never do that, like how are you gonna improve? You know, you need to be curious and you need to have an open mind for it. That's a really big pop between these two. Jack 5, oh my goodness. Well, that guy has some fucking fire in his veins. Maybe I shouldn't have check raised him. Do you know what I mean? Well, I should have check raised him. Maybe I should have checked him on the fucking on the fucking river when I had 2 pair. But now you know, right? Okay, that's a good raise though. I like that. Check. Good raise, but Jack 5. I like the raise. This is a problem though. As soon as you get here, because the person that's gonna limp, against you. The person that's going to limp against you is going to hit this board a reasonable amount, right? Because people like to limp king high, queen high hands like 10-9, jack 10, queen 9, queen 10. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. So if somebody limps and you raise and they call and you bet this and they call again, then I think once you're here, you just need to think like, okay, you know, you also have jack 5, right? So you have the, wait, did I raise? No, right? Okay. So you also have the exact fucking card that you want them to have. Right, you want to fold out a hand that calls with Jack X on the flop. Like, let's say this guy is Ace Jack or Jack 9 or Jack 8 or whatever. So having a Jack here is not ideal. Yeah, that's a big pot. That's a big pot. That guy wasn't going anywhere. Yeah, so you're always kind of looking for clues, and I don't know, I thought that this was a little bit, looked insanely strong, but it's also impossible to figure out bluffs. And when that's the case, it's usually just a strong hand, right? And then when you have a strong hand, you're probably overplaying it, if you can't put any bluffs across from it. But final table is a constant sort of like ebb and flow of where the money goes, right? And so we were the top dogs and now we're not, but we really have to immediately decelerate and realize that we're not in a commanding position to where we can just open. So now we're gonna knit it up, because now all of a sudden we're 6 out of 7 with a stack that's even shorter than us. And we're just in survival mode now.